Hi everyone. I had mentioned prior to spring break that when we return, we were going to get into our finance unit. So this week's lessons will kind of be an introduction to our finance unit, and then we'll get into a little bit more depth into some subjects, finance subjects that are mentioned within this presentation, and just some more of the nitty gritty into finances that I think are really important for you all to know as you are on your own after high school. So we'll kind of go through the top 10 things you need to know about money before you actually leave home. So number 10, independence means you pay your own way. Independence is more than not living with your parents. To really be independent means to be financially independent, and sometimes it's not really going to be until your mid-20s. You may be out of the house and your parents may not be living with you. However, maybe they're paying for your rent or giving you some type of allowance every month while you're at school. But to really be independent is being financially independent. Know that establishing your own home takes some time, planning, and savings. Don't expect to have everything right away when you have your own place. Even in your dorm room, your first apartment, things take time to actually accumulate, and it gets really expensive if you do try to get everything at once. If you even think about what your parents have in your own home, they probably spent a lot of time developing that lifestyle, accumulating all those possessions, and really building an actual home for you and your family. Don't expect that to happen right away, right when you move in the first day. I mean, I've had my home for almost 3 years, and I'm still getting things and doing upgrades and all of that because it actually takes time, and again, it is super expensive. Number 9, know how to protect your financial identity. This is something that we'll talk about a little bit later in more depth with financial identity theft, but it's something important to be aware of and to understand how to protect. Definitely be smart when shopping online. That's where a lot of fraud occurs. Make sure, it's definitely recommended if you do have a credit card to use your credit card when you're purchasing online versus a debit card where, if you were to get hacked, those hackers would have direct access to your checking account and all of your liquid funds if you were to use a debit card. If you have a credit card, again, that's kind of borrowed money, so it's something that, won't really affect you and your, again, liquid cash and what you have in your account. However, most financial institutions will refund any money and do those investigations if you were hacked or if there was some type of fraud. But we'll get into that a little bit later in the semester. Definitely understand and be aware of online fraud. So with skimming devices are electronic devices that are in ATMs or gas pumps usually. So what skimming devices do is that they lift the data stored in magnetic strips on your credit and debit cards, and they can capture all that information, use it to do whatever purchases that they want. I always look at the card slots, especially at gas stations, really carefully. If there are any wires or anything that looks unusual about them, pay inside and don't pay outside at the actual pump. And even with ATMs, a lot of people who use skimming devices will actually target ATMs as well because they can get access to your bank account as well. Phishing is really email fraud. So if you were to get any type of email that says, we've noticed a weird transaction in your account, please provide your name and account information and we'll look into this for you. Never ever give any type of information online or via email, even if it directs you to a site. Sometimes those sites are not legit. Hackers usually spend a lot of time creating those type of websites or web pages to look like one that is from a financial institution when it's not. So usually banks, if there was any type of fraud or anything serious on your account, they would call you or there would be an automated message for you to actually go inside the bank to take care of the matter. So just be aware of those because there's a ton of those that are popping up everywhere. And then you definitely want to check your credit report on a regular basis. Again, something we'll get into a little bit later, but everybody is entitled to a free credit report every year. A lot of times, some identity theft or identity fraud isn't even noticed until someone checks their credit report, because then they see all these credit cards that were being applied for, or maybe that are open and being used. Because again, hackers and scammers have a lot of different ways, so the actual person doesn't see or know what they're doing. So checking your credit report is something you definitely want to do regular basis, at least once a year, to make sure that everything is legit and everything is in line with your finances. And a side note, sorry for that squeakiness, it's my dog playing with a toy. Next, as I mentioned in the Consumer Man video, track your cash flow. So with your cash flow, you definitely want to kind of see where your money is going and what you're spending your money on. You don't have to track every single penny. Some people do, and it works for them, but tracking helps to reveal the spending patterns that you have, and that way you can kind of manage it and adjust as needed. I know this is really hard. I know I had a hard time with this as a high schooler, but you definitely want to curb undisciplined spending. So there are times when spending gets a little out of control, and maybe you are like going crazy with, buying food all the time and not eating at home or buying groceries. But it's something that you'll kind of learn to do as you go, and it does take some time to kind of curb this undisciplined spending. Next is you want to try to control your debit card. I know some of you, if not most of you, will probably have a debit card that you use on a regular basis to make purchases, but try to record spending as you go if possible. Sorry, again, I really apologize that you guys hear my dog playing with his toys, so please just try to ignore all that because he's a little wild. But anywho, record spending as you go. I know it's kind of an old school method, but there are some people who still do track their expenses on a check register, just like in this photo over here. And you can certainly do that if it works for you. I know a lot of you may just check online banking to see where you're at, and that's completely fine. But you definitely want to just make sure you take into account any automatic payments, like for Netflix or whatever other subscriptions that you all have, and be sure to record everything accordingly so you don't overdraft or go negative in your account. If you don't already do this, I would definitely recommend it, but check your bank balance frequently. I know I check my bank balance at least once a day, if not 2-3 times a day. That way, again, you can be reminded of some automatic payments that are coming out. And that way, if you are making a big purchase, you can obviously make sure you have enough money in there, but you definitely always want to avoid overdrafting your account and accruing any other fees. Number 6 is managing your risk. So life includes a lot of risk, and a lot of the risks that we take or risky behaviors that we engage in may result in some type of financial obligation. But we can control all this risk by planning. We have a lot of control over some things we don't have under any control over. However, with risk, a lot of the risk are emergencies, and it can cause long-term financial problems, but we can always try to predict these risks and try to manage them accordingly. So first type of risk is avoiding risk. I mean, there are some things that we know we should avoid. Not smoking, not, buying a motorcycle because it's dangerous, not jumping out of an airplane without a parachute. So these are all things that, we can avoid, we can live without, and we do have control over. Next is reducing risk. Reducing risk is taking precautionary measures. Precautionary measures could be anything from installing smoke alarms or carbon monoxide detectors, or even eating healthy and exercising. Because if we can eat healthy and exercise often, we could avoid any type of health problems and having to go to the doctor often and pay for medication and all of that. Then we can transfer risk. So this transferring risk is really paying a fee to transfer responsibility for a major expense. And transferring risk examples would include any type of insurance. So a lot of serious financial problems that may occur are unexpected medical costs. So if we do have health insurance, that can help manage an emergency in some of the expenses so we don't have to pay so much out of pocket. Having car insurance is also another way that we can transfer risk because we pay a fee every month to help minimize financial loss when an accident occurs. So instead of paying thousands of dollars because we got into a huge car accident, we may only pay a smaller amount to kind of alleviate those bigger costs. Assuming risk, there are always some things that we are going to do just because if you are a risk taker and if you do like to live life on the edge, that's completely fine. But you have to be willing to pay the price if something happens. So like in this example, this gentleman over here laying on a sleeping tiger could potentially get mauled and, need some serious medical attention. So he's assuming that risk because he knows what's involved and he's willing to pay for those risks if something bad were to happen. Number 5, plan for the unexpected. You definitely want to create a strategy. A great strategy is to create an emergency fund. Experts do recommend that your emergency fund should have at least 3 to 6 months of living expenses. So if something were to happen, maybe you were to lose your job, get laid off, even, that's pretty applicable in our time now with the coronavirus. A lot of people are losing their jobs. So if they do have a healthy amount in their savings account, they may be able to live without having to apply for unemployment. However, if not, then they have to look at other means for getting some income. You definitely want to plan for the inevitable. Again, those emergency funds that you have saved up could help you plan for the future. So, saving up a little bit for any car trouble, your oil changes, car maintenance, anything like that will help you alleviate those costs in the future. Especially if you can, anticipate, I'm probably going to need a new phone here soon because mine's cracked and, doesn't have a good battery life. You can kind of plan for those and start saving as you can. Number 4, budgets are for everybody. Everybody can budget and there's not a right way to budget. However, doing so in a way that suits you will help you reach your financial and personal goals. It doesn't mean that you have to have a spreadsheet or track everything every single day. However, having some sort of plan for you to save and meet your needs and wants will help you go a long way with your finances. Definitely try to estimate expenses just to help you control your spending. I know I always try to highball a lot of my expenses just so, I'm estimating more than not having enough, but it'll help you control your spending when you're looking at your finances. Number 3, needs and wants are very, very different. Definitely always pay for your needs first. Shelter, clothing, food, and some of those will be a little bit flexible, like food you may not spend the same amount every single week or every month. However, just make sure that you take care of all of the necessities that you need first. Try to defer impulse spending. So definitely don't buy something just because it came out today, like a new iPhone or whatever. But avoiding those types of impulse purchases will save you a lot of money over the long run. So if you can, again, plan for certain expenses and kind of budget, that will definitely just help you control your spending a little bit more. It's okay to have some wants. If you have wants, again, just kind of budget for those. If you definitely want to go on a vacation sometime, you don't have to go on the vacation tomorrow, but maybe you are going to save $100, $200 a month so that you can have enough for that vacation in 6 months or within the next year. Number 2, just know that being responsible with money is definitely hard work. It's definitely more fun to spend instead of save, but that just takes some discipline. That's something that I'm still learning to do because I always do want to spend money instead of save. However, I just definitely have to have a lot of self-control and discipline to put money in my bank account first, pay myself first before I actually spend it. Finally, what you own is not who you are. I know a lot of you like to have name brand items and look your best, but just know that advertisers spend a lot of money on marketing to make you buy things. Try not to fall into those gimmicks because that's how, again, people make their money and companies make their money. lastly, I'm going to have you all participate in a discussion board around personal finance around this specific quote. Personal finance is more personal than it is finance. It is more behavior than it is math.